Hello, everybody. Dr. Elsie Coe here. We're talking about how do we reawaken, quote unquote, the human spirit at work. I don't know about you guys, but we are struggling with finding people to work in some of the roles that we are, in our organization. There's problems with staffing everywhere, and we're not just dealing with the product issues, but we're dealing with the people issues. And how do we engage our employees so that the really good ones stay with us and make sure that we can continue to thrive and help our patients get better. So today I have an expert with me today, and she's my mentor. She's been my coach. She's helped me get my ICF credentials in order so I can be certified. My name is Dr. Elsie Coe. I'm the founder and CEO of Lead Physician Online Leadership Program for Physicians. I also practice what I preach as a Chief Medical Officer of American Endovascular and Amputation Prevention. If any of these videos really speak to you, please check out our YouTube channel and subscribe so you can be alerted for any new videos that come up, and we have some old ones too. Lead Physicians all about bringing passion, purpose, and potential back to our physicians. So let me just introduce to you Darelyn Mitsch, DJ Mitsch. Let me bring her on here. Hi, DJ. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to be here because I'm so excited about you becoming a credentialed coach as well, and I know the impact you have in the world.
I definitely want to talk about that towards the end. So if you're interested as a physician to get ICF coaching training, because people have asked me about that, please stay towards the end. But let me just introduce DJ. She is my coach at the Healthcare Institute. She started Pyramid. Let me just show you these here for an example. She's a CEO and founder of Pyramid Resource Group. And she's a founding member of the International Coaching Federation. If you don't know what that is an actual way to certify coaches instead of, there's so many coaches out there, but this certification is recognized internationally. And she was one of the founding members and one of the first 25 people in the world to become master certified coach, which is a long drawn and amazing feat to undergo. She founded the Pyramid Leadership and Healthcare Coaching Institute, which I've been a part of, and I absolutely loved it. She's also the founder of Team Advantage team coaching program and the 6th president of the ICF globally. So thank you so much, DJ. We want to talk about your book, Zombies to Zealots, Reawaken the Human Spirit at Work. And to me, this hit home because I did that TEDx talk on having a growth mindset. And a lot of this has to do with how do you engage your employees and how do you yourself reinvent who you are. So thank you so much for talking about this book. Can you tell me a little bit about why you started this and some of the main points?
Yeah, so one of the things that I started out to do was a research project for an engagement program that we had done for Sanofi Pharmaceuticals. And we moved their engagement in a year from in the high 50s, low 60s, I think it was 61.4% on their engagement survey, to 90.4, almost 30 points. And the way we did that was to simply create a culture of coaching. And we trained change agents in that organization. So each change agent, 25 people, represented 100 people, 2,500 employee base for the division, the commercial division of Sanofi USA. And when we started that program, there was so much richness in developing trust and safety and some of the things we wanted to measure that we created a research platform, and we researched a lot of leadership behaviors and change leadership that occurred during the process. And instead of writing a white paper, which the world doesn't need a lot more white papers, but instead of doing that, I decided to just encapsulate what we learned in the book. And one of the reasons I called it Zombies to Zealots is that when I stood back and listened to how leaders talk about the individuals, the people, right? It's people, product, and process, always in an organization. And when I heard them talk about the people, they called them knuckle draggers. They called them disengaged. They were zombied. And I heard that language and I thought, that's the name of my book. I'm not gonna do this as something that's really tired and old, or that requires a lot of people to dig into, I want to make it accessible. And one of the reasons for that is not only do we see a change in engagement, but the part of us that is the spirit, right? The anima, what animates us, and particularly in medicine, what calls people into medicine is that you heed something that you cannot ignore, right? And it's too hard otherwise. The reason that you go in is to be in a helping profession in a way that you have an expertise that you've developed over time. And to see a body of people, when the Surgeon General put out a report in May that says this is now an epidemic, that burnout in the medical community is not okay, right? We've got to address this now. And to have it be an emergency, a state emergency for the United States alone is a big deal. And it's a World Health Organization conversation. So the fact that we're going to, as all of us are patients too in this medical world,
Yes.
The fact that we're going to be short on who will see us and treat us for things like, well, anything is not okay. So how do we get our hands around what it means to really be in meaningful conversations? How do we create trust and safety again? And that was what I set out to do with this book. So it's written in 4 phases. And I think you know a little something about that, but let me just stop and see what questions I raised for you.
No, so that's so good. I mean, that's exactly what we need, what you deliver, and how we even have these conversations with our employees. How do we get them to feel the passion again for what we're doing? It's been exacerbated through COVID. More and more people feel burned out. People are leaving. They don't want to deal with it anymore. They feel like a regular cog in the wheel. I wanted to talk about the 4 points that you bring up in your book, if that's okay, just to give people a hint of what it is that you are trying to say in your book to help people re-engage.
Yeah. So I think you've got it. But the first one was to reawaken. And so I want to look at the columns of consciousness. And Dr. Carolyn Mace, who is a renowned anthropologist, says that we evolved as human beings from sort of a tribal consciousness, which is the level 1, to individuation, which is where we look at what we want for the first time, to symbolic consciousness. In medical professions, what I found is that you kind of skip from the tribal consciousness or what others want from you right into the symbolic conversation of where can I serve?
Right.
So a lot of that might happen out of your family of origin, but moving into the symbolic work is something that happens, that you have to make a really conscious decision to become a practitioner in the medical world. Right. So you've done that and you're in symbolic work, and now the world shows up in a very different way. And, oh, by the way, not only you're practicing, but you're also leading. And, oh, by the way, you've got financial responsibilities. So you're in the middle of a pandemic where everybody's working 80 to 100 hours a week, and you're having to go into a business meeting on a Monday and talk about the bottom line. And something is missing in the humanity piece of this. There's a dehumanization that is happening around the globe in work, but particularly in medicine. And so how do we engage people to really remember who they are? And the first piece is for each leader to stop for a minute. I'm going to say hire a coach, but to begin to look at, why am I in this game? What is my real purpose? Am I on point with my mission? And so I give you sort of a checklist in the book to really look at that. The other thing I do is to have leaders stop talking about people as top talent, head count.
I love that. Yeah, you are not your title.
You're not the description of your title. You're so much more than that. And
so much more.
Yeah. So we have to look at what animates you, right? Mm-hmm. What brings you online, and what is it that you need to find freedom from? And so that's a part of the first exploration in the Reawaken, is to look at how do we shift from being sort of in a rote way of being in the world and working every day.
And that's the growth mindset piece that I love.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly how we think. We're like, this is it. This is my job, and that's all there is.
Yeah. And I have had several physician leaders that I've coached lately, because I still coach 3 or 4 people at a time in addition to the teaching, because I want to stay current, right? Relevant. But I've had 2 of them put their head on the desk for the first 5 minutes of the conversation and not move. when I said, and all I said was, how are you? Boom. And then all I said was, I'm right here whenever you're ready. So I think for a lot of people in your world, people have got to give them a minute, right? It's like you cannot not do what you are trained to do. So how do we free you up to do more of that? And then how do we become conscious as leaders to free others up, right? What is the stuff, the superfluous stuff, the mandates that we really need to revisit so that there's some freedom in execution of medical practices, but also an honoring of what it means for people to be whole, balanced. And that's what we do in coaching, is we bring people into the conversation of self-discovery so they remember why.
Yep. And you know what? I want to quote from your book, which I love, on page 51. You said, let me just, you said, remember, you are who you are. You are not what you do. You are not what others say about you, not the labels in your company, not the labels from family or friends. You may play many roles in your world, but you are more than the sum of these. Remember, not just who you wanted to be. Remember, you become who you really are when you understand your contribution. Now go, become, work at something that is meaningful and demands the best in you. Lead yourself and others. You be you. DJ's Manuscript Journal, October 2015. I love that.
Thanks. And the way that came to me is the way a lot of writing comes to, well, more writers than me, but to me, is to sit down and just be quiet, to find that still point we all have, and to ask myself a question. And when I asked myself a question in that journal that day, it was, what am I to do now? And that's always a question that lives in us. If we're active human beings, it's what's next. And when that kind of poem or quote came out, it was like, it was really written as advice to me, but it was so poignant in the work that I'm doing with others that it was like, okay, this is something we need to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
And if you'll see, I also, I use the prefix re, which means the alpha and omega when you go back to its origin and etymology. To re is to look at something with new eyes from its origin. So to remember is to get back into your body and remember who you are.
Yes,
So,
yes.
Yeah, remember.
And a lot of times we define ourselves by our title, like you said, and we define ourselves based on what we think other people are looking at us to be instead of who we really are.
So Elsie, do you think that there's an identity crisis in all of that for most of your colleagues?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we got to get rid of that whole mentality and remember that, we went on a long path to become who we are, and that this is not the end of the journey. It's just,
no. And there's an evolution. One of the things that I'm seeing for leaders is that, it's out of the triple aim, there's the fourth aim, right? Which is the care and keeping of our friends in medicine. But
yes.
It is, how do we reconnect as humanity? And how do we treat others with that level of recognition, not just respect, but recognition, that I am and you are and we are together, something that's bigger than each of us individually. So it is so it goes into the reconnection, right? So how do we reconnect? One of the things is to look at how do we dehumanize our environment. So one of the things is to make a checklist. Where do you feel dehumanized? Where do you feel like others around you feel dehumanized? If you're looking at a host of people leaving, why are they leaving? They leave years ago, the Saratoga Institute and other organizations did research on why people leave. And the number one reason is they leave a bad boss. That hasn't changed. Oh, by the way, even though the research
that has not changed.
No, even though the research is 30 years old. So now you have a group of people, 56 to 64, who might still be practicing medicine and still lead, who are burned out, exhausted, done, leaving, and who's being assigned the new roles and who's stepping up to take a lead. And often it is someone who's really young, who doesn't have a lot of experience in leading others, doesn't have any leadership training, but is really good, first in class, maybe has a lot of compassion. And I'm sure they have a lot of strengths, but how do you, and this is why you exist with your, Lead Physician Institute, but it's how do we prepare them to get better? And oh, by the way, how do we create a pathway for those who are really looking at next phase to stick around and to reconnect so that they are loving the role of mentor and bringing others along. So if they can't stay, if they don't want to stay anymore, what do we do to engage them? So that whole notion of engagement starts with listening. And one of the first things we do in organizations when we start a change agent program, change management program, is to run listening sessions. And we seed 4 questions. And those 4 questions are simply, what do you need that you don't have now resource-wise? And just asking the questions around what would keep you fully engaged, fully a part of this. And we get all their answers. And then we have those change agents report back the anonymous survey data with the top 3 or 4 themes, and have the leaders look at those themes and say, we can do something about these things right now. And they start addressing those things so that there is a sensitivity that's built throughout of being heard. I have
Absolutely.
been heard. And once I am heard, I start trusting you again. Because trust takes a long time and a long runway to exact if you're not trusting today.
Yep. The weirdest thing for me was to change jobs from one organization to another and being a physician leader in both, and now the chief medical officer. And I remember the first month, working with employees, and they're looking at me with blank stares. And I was so used to building that trust and having like employees who are so engaged to ones who are so detached. And it was like mind blowing after having so many years being in one organization and starting from scratch for another. And you realize all of these things that you're talking about that we have to implement over again.
Yeah. And there's a lot of this, drumming their hands, waiting for particularly a new leader or somebody younger coming from the same organization or somebody shifting in. And there's a lot of movement. It's like a big volleyball game. Everybody's rotating, right? So it's like, okay, if you're coming in, a lot of the people that you're inheriting, and I want to say something about managing your inheritance, but a lot of people that you're inheriting have waited it out through other leaders. And so there is almost a cynicism about who you are, and they're going to wait you out and see what are your trigger points, what really, do you want from them? And so going in and doing your own listening sessions is a great place to start, right? And it's where coaches start to really look at what do you want to see happen here? What can you imagine, and what can we imagine together, and building foundations of agreements so that everybody is sort of holding hands from the get-go. And so that first 90 days, having a 90-day plan to really look at, if I'm a new leader, what is it that I want to accomplish, and what are the questions, my best questions, what can I ask? So the listening sessions are a good idea.
Very good idea. And to show that you're actually doing something about some of the concerns that they're talking about. To show that you actually are there for them. You're there for the right purpose.
Yeah.
And then you brought up rehumanize, which is kind of along the same lines.
Yep. Yeah. So the last section of the book is actually something you can just pick up and read. And in fact, it's all written so that you can just read one section. You don't have to read the whole book because nobody reads the whole book anymore. So if you look at the very last part of it, it details the story of the change agent initiative. So it puts in play an idea for any of your leaders to consider. It's like we start here, and basically we're going to take away anything that is dehumanizing for those people around us. We're going to change the language. So for those people who value justice and inclusion and equity and diversity, it's like, how does that live without it being used? I'm also having a lot of leaders say that's being used like a hammer over my head if I hear one more time. So how do we integrate that so that it is something that's just everybody feels safe? Mm-hmm. And truthfully, when you compound medicine with the fact that there are, let's just be real, that there are places in our society that are not safe. So Gallup just did a survey that was released last week around sadness and grief. We are dealing not only with burnout in the medical profession, but the because you touch human beings to heal them, you're dealing with sadness and grief at levels that have never been measured before at this level. So it's like 60% of the people that you're seeing in medicine are dealing with that. And a lot of what we have forgotten about in this path of integration, because I'm also a healing practitioner, but in a different art, is that there is this path of integration of spirit. And we stuff a lot of what we are feeling, sadness and grief, into our bodies without any expression of it. And then it becomes something that's physical, that manifests as physical reality. And so, so there's that piece. And that's a reckoning. And it's something that cutting edge hospital systems and physicians are really aware of. It's like there's more going on than just what we see as a symptom, that we have got to integrate the whole. And oh, by the way, patients have got to be doing that for themselves, right? I broke my foot over the holiday weekend, over the 4th of July. I just missed a step and twisted my foot and broke it. And I've never had a broken bone. So this is a whole new world for me. But then I remembered I had looked up the week before and go, can I have a break here? It's been a tough year. With the families. Then I went, no. I didn't mean
no, you literally watch what you say, right? Watch what you wish for.
But that's just it. It's becoming more conscious of how we, because we're all patients, how we as human beings are wired to experience all the things we experience. And if we can get the patients population to take responsibility for their own conscious awareness around what they put in their bodies, around, everything, including oops, I fell and broke my foot. I better do something about this.
Yeah, and it starts with us recognizing what's going on within ourselves. Like you said, when you say reconnect, you also mean connecting within with the external world. And I like that, because I learned so much from you. I just want to say that I just, I wasn't even, you didn't ask me to say any of this, but I'm saying that I joined Healthcare Coaching Institute to get ICF training, and I learned so much more than I thought I would learn. And I encourage anyone who's interested, who's a physician, and they don't know like what school to go to for what. And there's so many ICF schools, but two of you who are in here teaching are founding members of the ICF. And I encourage you to go to this website and sign up, because it's just, it's learning the communication skills, the presentation skills, interactions. It's all about the people and how we treat ourselves, how we think, and how we communicate in the right way to engage people, to trust you to speak and to be productive in what you're trying to do.
Oh, that's very cool. Thank you for that promotion. I will say this final thing, that the cohorts are 20 people or less. They're made up of people like Elsie, like you, Elsie. And so you're in with like-minded professionals, and it's a great place to really spend 11 months letting go of some old constructs and ideas.
Huge.
Yeah. And then getting to a place where you build a community that is about the more meaningful conversations that bring you back to purpose. And those are the conscious conversations we all want to be in right now and need to be in. It's what we're longing for.
Yeah. And one last thing I want to say is that I'm so used to my before was that I was more used to being a mentor to people, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there is an element when you coach, you want to see that other person as a person who can who's bright, who can make up their own decisions, who can come up with it and are more motivated as a result, because they're the ones who stated it. And you're just bringing insight into what you see in some of the paradigms that they may be showing, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. And that has been the life-changing way of how I coach, thanks to you.
Wonderful. Well, you're a brilliant coach. We're so excited that you're in the world to not only practice medicine, but to coach. You're quite the rock star and create impact everywhere you go. So we're thrilled that you have graduated the program.
Thank you. Woo-hoo. And I just wanted to show, I'm also interested in this. I just probably in the I think November, you have Team Advantage, which is if you want to do team coaching. And this is where you find out more about our book, zombies to zealots.com. And one last website, I know there's so much here, but you have so much to add and help people. pyramidresource.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsie. It's my pleasure. We'd love to have any of your colleagues join us for any of this training to become better with the people.
Yes. So thank you everyone for watching. My name is Dr. Elsie Coe. If you have a topic on physician leadership, please reach out to me at info@drlccoe.com. We also are starting our physician online leadership program, both group and one-on-one. So go to leadphysician.org for that. Any last words of wisdom for us, DJ?
I think, there are so many things I could say, but let's go back to the remember who you are and who you are designed to be. If you're practicing medicine, if you're a physician, I just send you so much love and light because we need you, and we need you to be in your best frame every day. And so, so know that you're being held in the light regardless of whether you ever do work with us or not. Go.
Thank you so much, DJ. I appreciate it. Stay on for us so I can say goodbye.